internet, MegaMogwai here, and I got another Legends of Runeterra video for you guys today. And today we have a peculiar video here, as I'm going to be talking about the current state of the metagame in Legends of Runeterra. I'm going to be talking in front of my camera for a few minutes, talking about all the issues. And I have divided this video in three parts. I don't have a script, but I have some points that I want to talk about. And there's like three main chapters. There will be in a pinned comment down below a series of timestamps in case you want to see, these specific subjects in general. So first of all, I'm going to be talking about the current state of the metagame and why we're in this state, because it's different. Like, it's very easy to identify like the situation, but it's not as easy to identify the reasoning behind the situation we're in, because there are different takes on it, and I'm going to explain exactly why we are in the scenario that we're in. Next, I'm going to talk about why I've said that I have some concerns regarding Riot's design team and their decisions as of late. Mainly, the conversation with that point will revolve around one card specifically. And I'm going to end the video by offering solutions, because I'm not just going to have a video being, oh, that's a problem, I don't like that, that's an issue, that's broken, that's toxic, and Riot fix everything. No, I'm actually going to do my very best to offer what I believe to be some really solid solutions to the issues that we are facing. So I want to make this video because I haven't really done one of these in a long time, and I am prone to explaining my concern, ranting rather, about my frustrations with the game within my gameplay videos or on my Twitter. And the thing is, when you talk about these things on Twitter or in the middle of a gameplay, I don't really have the opportunity to really dive into it deeply, and therefore a lot of my my opinions and everything are just like very superficial, right? They're kind of like the tip of the iceberg, and this may have led to a fellow colleague implying that I am prone to knee-jerk reactions. Not pointing any fingers, but I did take a little bit of offense to that. I don't think this is entirely true, but I will admit that because I am emotional and I am prone to outbursts. I am Latino. My blood boils hot. That can hinder my message. So today I'm going to do my best to be cold-headed, rational about things, and I'm going to do my best to express myself as well. I'm not the most eloquent guy in the community, definitely not the smartest, but I do feel like I have some valuable insight to provide, and I do feel like my perspective can add to the conversation. So without further ado, let's talk about the first aspect of today's video, which will be the issues within the metagame. What the issue is, and why we are here, all right? So right now, the main issue with the metagame is that it is incredibly fast-paced. I would argue that's the biggest problem. Right now, the game is really centered around decks that are trying to kill you as early as possible. That is something that we can all pretty much agree on. Most of the meta that you run into are decks that are just going turbo and super fast and trying to end the game quickly. The predominant deck doing this is, but of course, Azir, IRELIA. What's important to talk about here is that not like what the problem is, but why we're here, because this is where opinions and perspectives they differ, and I think it's important to clarify like what is actually causing this. Yes, there's a lot of spider aggro. There's Draven Jinx discard. There's Azir Darius aggro, and there's Azir IRELIA, right? These are decks that are ending the game by turn 5 or 6. But it's very important to make a distinction here. Azir IRELIA and the other decks that I mentioned prior to Azir IRELIA are very, very different decks. The other three are aggro burn decks. This is a combo deck. What this means is that Azir IRELIA as an archetype is not vulnerable to the same things that the burn decks are. So we are not in an aggro metagame because of we're not specifically, because some of these claims that some people have made are not inherently incorrect, but we are not in an aggro meta because there's been too much power creep or because there's not strong enough late game win conditions. We're not in an aggro meta because removal is too expensive, or like, we're not in that situation because of these things. The reality is we are in this situation because of Azir IRELIA as a deck. So let me explain myself here. Azir IRELIA as a deck has an incredible matchup against reactive control-based decks. Specifically, something like something that involves Shadow Owls and Freljord, right? That's been one of the go-to control decks. Like, not only right now we think about Trundle, Lysandra control, but there's also been Anivia, there's been Commander Ladro's decks, etc., etc. All these decks that revolve around using these AoE spells are decks that succumb to Azir IRELIA because in its current state, Azir IRELIA will beat down any deck that aims to win beyond turn 6. Azir IRELIA is the reason why these other aggro burn decks are thriving as of now. We have answers for those decks. The card pool allows us to deal with those decks. If those decks become dominant, those decks will never be tier 1. They'll be tier 2 at best. And we have the means to deal with them. The problem is, if you run a deck that is prepared to deal with those, you're going to be stomped by Azir IRELIA because of how different these decks are, despite the fact that both of these types of decks are actually finishing the game really quickly. This is the reason why the metagame is so fast. But what's funny is that Azir IRELIA has, I find this really funny, it has like a very interesting effect in that it is kind of like holding back another very toxic deck that also threatens the overall viability of control as an archetype. And having it, sit and win in the sidelines. And if Riot makes the huge mistake, it would be a huge mistake of nerfing Azir IRELIA and not doing anything with this deck that I'm talking about, then we're not gonna have a better meta in our hands. I'm talking about Lysandra Trundle Watcher. The Watcher Spectral Matron combo is the reason why this deck single-handedly just shuts down other control strategies, is because it can effectively end games consistently at turns 8 or 9, faster than other late game oriented strategies. So every time, if you're playing like a Karma deck or any other deck that's aiming to win in the late game, like a Field of Rush or something, if you face Lysandra Trundle Watcher, they will always take you down before you're able to get your strategy going off. So this deck, the reason why this deck is not dominating the meta, because the thing about the Lysandra Trundle control is that it loves to queue into all these aggro decks. Spiders, Draven, Jinx, Discard, Azir, Darius, Smork, like Withering Whale, man. Withering Whale, Blighted Ravine, like they just have a field day. It's an amazing match. It's such a good time. But because Azir IRELIA is at the top, it's shutting that down. But that deck will shut other control decks as well. So it's important to note that just fixing Azir IRELIA will not fix the metagame. And this is important for me to point out because I know that when I make this video, especially on the likes of Reddit, there's gonna be a bunch of people like, oh, he complains about every top tier deck ever. He's always whining. It's always the best deck. And blah, 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 blah. All right, Timmy. I get what you're saying. Yes, I've complained about Thresh NASUS. I complained about Twisted Fate Fizz. Honestly, all those decks were very much worth complaining about. They did end up getting fixed, didn't they, buddy? The thing is, it's also important to note that while we are addressing one problem, that doesn't mean that other prior problems that were existing up until this point have vanished away. Okay? I'd rather complain about every problem every season within the game than to stay quiet and just let the game implode on itself. All right? I just slap your face off. So, this is a problem right now. Azir IRELIA is very toxic because even though Riot's own Duet said, and there is some truth to the statement, that the term oppressive is overused, a lot of times used to describe something that we don't like. Like I said, there is truth to that. I'm sorry to burst your bubble, Riot boy. Riot boy. That's so disrespectful. I'm sorry to burst your bubble, sir. But oppressive is 100% accurate when it comes to describing Azir IRELIA as a deck. Because it is, I don't think I've seen a deck that is as meta-defining as this one in the game. For the reasons that I just stated, right? So, Azir IRELIA forces people to play really fast. Because if you're trying to play stuff like, we thought at first that dragons were good. Like I said, the opinion with this deck has shifted. At first it was very divided, myself included. Because I refused to reach conclusions very early on. Like, I'd rather wait. And then, as time passed, you know, it's been shifting, tilting to the same side until we're at a point where I think the vast majority of the community despises this deck. And I would even say that I'm pretty certain that some people at Riot that contributed to that post that they made have changed their minds at this point. And that's fine. There's no shame in this. Let's stop shaming people for changing opinions. It's important to stay loyal to the truth and not to the ego. Opinions change. I've seen the greatest of players say the stupidest shit in hindsight. Like, people, like, really high-level players say, well, NASUS won't be viable. He's going to suck. The Slay's not going to be a thing. And I don't go to that guy and be like, hey, remember when you said this like 3 months ago, you fucking idiot? Because people who do this refuse to actually, like, introspect on themselves and be like, oh, wait, what did I say 3 months ago myself? You know, that they act as if the human mind can, like, change their views on something by being forced through different perspectives. English. It is absurd to me. The fact that people are pointing out what people say in the past and using it to ridicule them or to just like disregard what they have to say. That is toxic as hell. That is dumb as hell. And you're not doing anything that contributes to the conversation. So stay quiet or change your ways. God fucking damn it. I need to get this off my chest because it's really infuriating. He's like, oh, well, he flip-flops more than a salmon. I don't have like a good, like I was thinking of just like, I don't know, making like a chicken reference or something. I ain't got nothing. I don't have a good response to that, but, or at least a quirky one. But shut the fuck up. Let me be a salmon. Let me be a fish. God damn it. I'd rather be a fish than be a rock. I don't know. So basically the point is it's important to acknowledge mistakes. You know, when you put yourself out there, when you're a vocal component of the community and you voice your opinions, sometimes you're going to be wrong. And that's fine. That's okay. All right? There's a toxic component of this community that is really, really against people criticizing. And they bring these stuff. Like they say, well, like I saw people say, well, Swim isn't a competitor anymore. He hasn't competed in this and that. Yeah, he's not an authority. He's not even trying to be an authority. Like, God damn. Shut up, man. Oh my God, dude. Oh, that feels good. Let's keep on going. Otherwise, I'm gonna go on this forever. So, again, Azir IRELIA, a problem. And more people are realizing this. More people are changing their mindset on it, and that's a good thing. We're all, you know, holding hands and realizing the issue, and there are ways to address it. But it's important to note that targeting this deck alone will not change everything, and that there are some other things to target. So I'm going to move on to the second part of this video, which will be the shortest one by far. I'm going to talk about some issues that I'm having with the design team. There's one big decision that they made that I find super concerning, and that is the decision to, you know, print this card, Merciless Hunter, in its current form. I'm almost certain that this card was not a 3-mana 4/3 initially, but after they saw how Shurima underperformed, they're like, well, we want Shurima to do better, so let's give them a busted 3-drop, right? The problem is, because right now Shurima is not in a great state, and if you think, well, Shurima is in 2 out of the 3 top tier decks. The thing is, right now the only face Shurima has is aggro. Shurima is a combo region. It has predict mechanics. It has the countdown synergies with landmarks as well. You have a lot of really cool stuff going on, but people are only playing Shurima. They're only playing a very few select cards, and they're just going face. They're using cards that are good, like Merciless Hunter and like Dunekeeper, to smork, right? And Merciless Hunter is a card that should not have been printed the way it is. It is effectively better than Callista. When you make a follower that's better than a champion, even if it's from a different region, that's just absurd. And it is an auto-include in pretty much every Shurima deck under the sun. Pun intended. So, because the sun is good. So, the thing is, one of the biggest gripes that I have with this card being printed like this is it got released in the same set they make Zilean. Like, hey, let's have this cool new champion, this old man that already struggles because of the turbo fast-paced nature of the meta. But let's print this guy and let's release the 3 mana answer to it. Right, here you have Zilean, and here you have what you will use on turn 3 to kill him every damn time. Have fun, buddy. Like, what the fuck are you doing? I have to be a little bit disrespectful here. Riot, what are you doing? What are you thinking? Making Merciless Hunter a thing. It is such a mistake, man. It's also like, it's not a way to solve problems. If your region is having some issues with viability, then perhaps look into the archetypes and try to enhance them instead of taking the lazy route and printing a busted 3-drop. That it's not even, I can't even go with the excuse, well, it's the region-defining card. No. Single Combat, Glimpse Beyond, those are region, by the way, most region-defining cards tend to be spells, like Make It Rain was for Bilgewater. Not a 3-drop that's just pushed on every level imaginable. Fearsome, 4/3 premier stat line, granting, not giving, granting, vulnerable, and targeting what you want to grant. Like, what the hell, man? What are you thinking? Right next to it, we have Porkahiri. If you predict, you get 1 more health than Merciless Hunter. But no fearsome and granting vulnerable. Like, like Jesus. It's such a bad call that it really does concern me. Because this is not the design philosophy they should be approaching. And they should be called out on this. Do better. I'm gonna leave it at that. Sorry if I sound harsh, but I feel like sometimes to get the message across, you gotta be. It's whatever. Point 3. I'm gonna offer some solutions to the issues. All right? Because I don't just want to rant here. And like I said, we have some problems and everything, but ultimately I feel like the Riot design team has done a great job overall, and I feel like all of this is solvable, right? But there's a lot of work to be done because there's one specific archetype that, in Lysandra Trundle, let's get to the point, that has not been nerfed when it should have been nerfed 2 months ago. And there are some issues that are piling up, but right now I'm going to offer the immediate solutions that need to happen and they imply the top 3 decks in the meta, which are, like I said, Azir IRELIA, THRESH NASUS, and Matron Watcher. So I call it Matron Watcher. These are the changes that they'll have a significant impact on the meta, and I believe they will lead to a very, very solid state of the game. So let me explain what they are, because I put a lot of thought into them. But again, this is my opinion, this is my view. I'm always open to discussion, but I do feel very strongly about these changes. I feel very confident in them. So let me target them. First of all, Azir IRELIA. What needs to happen to this archetype? I've been very vocal about this deck, and I've been very, like I said, I'm very emotional a lot of times when I express my opinions. So it can come off like I'm gonna try to murder this deck. I'm actually, I'm a firm believer that nerfs and buffs need to be responsible, right? You can't go over the top. It doesn't take that much to completely take a super dominant deck and just doom its viability, right? So I'm not going crazy here with these things, and I feel like I have a very, very solid argument for all of these nerfs that I'm considering. I would also love to see a lot of buffs besides this, but I'm going to be focusing on the nerfs specifically. even though I would be very welcome to buffs as well. So when it comes to Azir IRELIA as a deck, this is the hardest. This is the hardest for me to like actually balance out, because Blade Dance is a pretty wacky mechanic to function around. There's a lot of implications, and I don't feel like it was, you know, designed responsibly, and it's not an easy thing to tackle. But I feel like I have some solid solutions here. Because of the nature of Blade Dance, I have two different options for changing this deck. Option A and Option B, we're going to call them, right? But before we move on to Option A and B, there are two changes that I want to see happen regardless of what option you go for. These two changes should happen for both Option A and B. And those are the Dunekeeper. Now, I've seen people say, well, make him a 1/1. I think this is actually too harsh. I think a 1/1 that spawns an ephemeral unit as a 1-drop is a bit of a big hit to a card that has a lot of cool implications, right? There's a lot of neat synergies, and I actually like how this card works in THRESH NASUS. I also like the fact that this card works really well with Azir as well. So I don't want to completely butcher it like that. What I want to do is I want to make it so that Dunekeeper switches up its stats, kind of like how the 1-drop from NASUS, the Squire, the Blaze Squire, I think it's called. The same treatment, but in reverse. Make it so that Dunekeeper has 1 power and 2 health. This makes it so that Dunekeeper can trade and survive against Spiderlings, Jury Rigs, or opposing Sand Soldiers as well, Blades from IRELIA, and can actually trade into them twice and function more effectively as a chump blocker, while taking away some of the absurd power that it represents, like a turn 1 4 damage 1-drop, which is pretty insane. Because this card has a lot of very strong synergies with the ability to summon 2 units for 1 mana that have a lot of implications already, I feel like the fact that it has 2 power on top of that is what makes this card too strong. So just giving it 1 power, but boosting its health to 2 is enough to nerf the card, but not make it unviable. So that's what I would change for Dunekeeper. And then a very, very important change that has to happen no matter what is the Sparring Student. This card was fine until they decided to print Blade Dance. Once they decided to design Blade Dance, this card just, you know, kind of like Spectral Matron, it got pushed way over the edge, right? And this card is like arguably the main reason why Azir IRELIA can focus so much on its offense and not have to invest too much on its defense. Because the reality is, this card forces you to attack early on when it's your turn, because it's gonna get bigger. You know, your opponent just attacked you like 4 times, and you're like, oh my god, I barely made it. Oh, this Sparring Student is back to 1/1. Oh, I gotta attack now. I gotta kill it before I get to big. Go. And then you don't actually develop your board for a potentially stronger attack, because you will be punished by this thing getting fatter and fatter. This thing not dying to trades is a problem. So my fix for Sparring Student would be increase its health to 2 and make it so that it only gains +1 power whenever you summon an ally. It has a set health that will not keep growing up. I don't want to keep it at 1 because I don't like the idea of this guy just dying to like 1 power blockers, because then what's the point of this card even, right? Like I want it to be a bit thicker and a bit harder to take down in that regard, but don't make it be a 1 mana 5/5 or 6/6 effectively, because that is just absurd, right? So that's what I would do. I think this change is super crucial and will definitely be one of the key aspects of making this deck fair. But again, very important to buff its health to 2, because I do still want this guy to be playable. So you need to make him a little bit more resilient than he would be otherwise. And those are the 2 changes that I will apply 100% to Azir IRELIA, regardless of what option you go for. Then we have options A and option B. Option A is just 1 change. That's it. And that would be Blade Dance only works if you have the attack token. This makes it so that with this change, you wouldn't have to nerf Azir, you wouldn't have to nerf the Marshal, you wouldn't have to nerf Emperor's Days, nothing like that. Which would make it so that Azir would be really nice outside of the IRELIA shell, and it would also be honestly very positive for the game, in my opinion. Do I expect this change to happen? No. Why? Because I don't think Riot wants to nerf Blade Dance like that. I think it's a new toy. I think it's also... I don't expect that from them. Honestly, I don't expect that from them. Especially after decisions like Merciless Hunter, you know, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think they're going to take that route, though I personally believe that would be the best, because it may not seem like it that much, but to make it so that they need the attack token to go for Blade Dance means that they can no longer threaten you with attacks with Blade Dance when it's your attack token, which would allow you to, you know, even if you're taking a huge hit on their attack, you're like, oh my god, how am I even alive? It's your turn. You have the attack token. Ionia Shurima has no rally. This would make it so that you would have more of an incentive to combine her with other regions that can rally. So you could rally and then start throwing the blades, right? But with Ionia Shurima, there's no rally. So you're like, okay, now I can breathe. All right, I can chill. I can start developing my board little by little. And I have to worry about my Wabushindaru and you dying immediately, right? You can just relax, build up your board, and then threaten them with an actual strong attack that you spend your turn developing, because Sparring Student is no longer ridiculous and they don't threaten you with the Blade Dance attacks. And you also build up a stronger defense in the process by forcing them to use some of their attackers to defend your own attack. You weaken their onslaught next turn, and it enhances your abilities to survive, and thus it makes the deck way more fair. It also makes it so that control decks don't get completely just blown back by the mechanic, because I think the mechanic is insane versus control, and I believe it would be the most elegant solution. But again, I don't expect Riot to do this. Option B. You don't want to change Blade Dance. You want Blade Dance to continue functioning the way it is. You're just adamant on the way it's been designed, and that's fine. All right? Hey, like, I'm not saying that my opinion is the end-all be-all, right? It's how I see things. You don't want to change it, and that's perfectly fine. We go with option B. Now, there have been a lot of people arguing for Emperor's DAIS to be nerfed. This is something that I'm not a fan of, because this would completely kill Lucian Azir as a deck, for example. And it would completely kill the card, honestly. Outside of Blade Dance, it would just completely shut it down. I think it's meant, like, it's clearly meant for you to be able to curve this into Azir. This would not only hurt Lucian Azir, but what if I want to build Lucian Hecarim again? Like, that's also shut down. I just feel like there's too much collateral damage by targeting this just because of one mechanic that was just introduced into the game, and I'm just not really for this card being nerfed to 3 mana. It would make the curve clunky. It would make it so that you're not supposed to play this with Azir. You know, it's just, I don't think this is an elegant solution at all. I'm not a fan of it. So what I would do is instead, I would apply 3 changes on top of the 2 obligatory ones. You know, with the Sparring Student and the Dunekeeper, I would apply 3 changes. First of all, Flawless Duet. What I would do is I would make it so that Flawless Duet Blade Dances 1 for 1 mana, or 2 mana Blade Dances 2. This may not seem like much, but it is a massive nerf especially to the Azir combo, because it slows down both Irelia and Azir's level up. It weakens the Imperial Marshal as well, and overall, it would be a fantastic nerf to what is otherwise an overtuned card. I feel like Flawless Duet spawning 2 blades is a bit over the top, and I think this would be a great nerf that would definitely slow down the deck. This would actually slow it down more than you think, and I think that would be a very, very nice solution, partially. Then you would have to make Azir 1/4, because you need to make it so that Azir is easier to kill. If Blade Dance is going to be able to be played at all times, Azir needs to be easier to remove. That's why I'm more of a fan of option A. But again, if we don't have that option, then Azir has to go down to a 1/4. You may be thinking, well, but now Merciless Hunter kills him too. Don't worry. We'll talk about that card soon. And then I would also nerf Inspiring Marshal to a 4/5 stat line. So basically, my solution is to, if you don't redesign Blade Dance as a mechanic, you have to nerf Flawless Duet, and you have to weaken the engines. Make them more vulnerable to removal so that control decks can actually have more of a chance amongst the other decks as well. So that's it. It's not that crazy, right? Like I'm not butchering a billion things. I feel like these changes are very reasonable and necessary for the deck. So either option A or option B, which one are you more of a fan of? Do you agree with my option B? Like, would you take a different approach? Let me know in the comments down below. This is what I would do. And I feel really strongly about these changes. I think these changes would do wonders. But again, that's just my take. So that's what I would do with Azir IRELIA. Now let's move on to THRESH NASUS. Again, I'll repeat myself. I really like THRESH NASUS as a deck. Even though I've complained about Atrocity a lot in the past, I really, really like the way the deck functions, and I think it's a really cool deck, and I like it being strong. The problem is it's too strong. It's too flexible, and it's too good against everything as of right now. It's the one deck that has withstood, all this crazy shift in the meta with IRELIA Azir. So I feel like it's about time we hit it a little bit harder, right? Last balance patch, Atrocity got nerfed and Blinded Caretaker got nerfed. I would have preferred to see Atrocity be slow speed, even though there's an argument, well, we need games to end. Yeah, but you don't need games to end with a card that just hits the Nexus directly with a thick body. I feel like Atrocity has been proven to be problematic enough in the past, but it's already been nerfed, and I'm actually happy with the current state Atrocity is in. I accept it. I don't think it was the best possible answer, but I accept it. I accept Atrocity at 7 mana. You won't see me complain about Atrocity for the foreseeable future. I've come to terms with that card, and I think it's fine. It's clearly not enough, especially with the introduction of Merciless Hunter. This archetype has not lost any viability whatsoever, and we need to hit it a little bit harder. Instead of targeting stuff like NASUS, or if it's late game, I feel like at this point, we have to address the early game. We've already nerfed Dunekeeper, with the Azir IRELIA, so that also affects this deck. But I feel like on top of Dunekeeper, there are other 3 minor stat changes that need to happen in order to make this deck, its power level, more fair. It's a very different problem from Azir IRELIA when it comes to like and here it's just about numbers, about weakening the early game a little bit. So this is what I would do. I would make Ravenous Butcher a 2/2. Especially once we've gotten like the new 1-drop that is effectively a 1-mana 3/3 by killing an ally. I feel like for 0 mana, reducing this guy's overall power to 2 will take a little bit of strength from their early game, and this card will still be perfectly viable, but it will be toned down. I am vehemently against nerfing the Curse Keeper again. The Escaped Abomination specifically. I think that nerf that happened way back is already good enough. Like, going below that is completely necessary. I believe Ravenous Butcher needs to take a bit of a blow, especially since the synergies with Streamer are incredible, and I would very much like to see it as a 2/2. Baccai Reaper, a phenomenal 1-drop that can represent the win condition on its own. It's not only in THRESH NASUS, but also in Azir Darius as a deck as well. I like the Fearsome. I like the thematic of the card. I don't want to tackle that. I feel like taking away the Fearsome would be too huge of a blow to the card, and I honestly don't think that's necessary. What I would do is I would make him a 0/2. Take away 1 power and make him start a little bit more from behind. Make it, since he builds up his power really easily, just make it slower and give, make it punishable in the sense that if you don't enable the synergies, you're not getting any damage out of this guy, right? It's a very slight nerf that I feel goes a long way and will make this card completely fair and would still enable it as a potential threat, which I like. But you slow it down a little bit by making it 0 power. And then Merciless Hunter, of course. Obviously, that would be the last change that would apply. And this goes for other decks as well. Make her a 3/3. That's simple. Make her a 3/3, which is what she should have been from the beginning. That way, she doesn't kill the newly nerfed Azir to 1/4, and she doesn't one-shot Zillion. It's fantastic, right? It's great. There we go. That's it. That's what I would do to Thresh NASUS. Ravenous Butcher to 2-2, Baccai Reaper to 0-2, and Merciless Hunter to 3-3. You do that, and I think the deck is still really strong, really competitive, high tier, but perhaps it won't be the king any longer, or it'll be at least more fair in that regard. Slow down its early game a little bit, and you're good to go. That's what I would do with Thresh NASUS. And last, but certainly not least, please, Riot, please, enough ignoring this problem. It's a huge problem. We saw it in the seasonal, in competitive play, on ladder as well. We want control to be back in the game. So for the love of God, accept this is a problem and deal with it. And the way I would do it is very simple. Just one change. Initially, I was on the boat of making the Watcher cost 3 mana. Because that would make it so that if you play Spectral Matron, if your Watcher costs 3 mana, once the requirement has been met, then you're not able to play it alongside the Spectral Matron on the same turn. But I never was like, I felt like this was the best solution, but at the same time, I didn't, because I like playing Lysandra outside of the Spectral Matron shell, and I like the Watcher as a potential alternate win condition if the game drags out too much. And having it cost 0 mana, or even 1 mana, I don't know, would it feels fine, right? It's only really Spectral Matron that breaks it. So I gotta give a shout out to a Spanish player who goes by Darlian, or Darlian, if you want to pronounce his name English accent, who had a very, very clever solution. Very clean as well. Spectral Matron no longer summons an exact copy of the unit. It summons it directly and gives it ephemeral. And just like that, the entire problem is solved. Think about it. If you play Spectral Matron and you spawn the Watcher directly, so one of the problems with this combo is that it allows you to cheat in the Watcher, right? Once you've leveled up Lysandra, if you have Spectral Matron in hand, you can just get the Watcher in instantly. This allows you to represent your late game control-based win condition, which tends to be extremely powerful, faster than any other control deck out there, which allows you to completely ruin the viability of other control decks. But now, if you spawn the Watcher directly, yes, you can still ramp into the Watcher. That's still a thing. But if you're facing a reactive deck that has tools for it, stuns, hush, even vengeance, etc., then all of a sudden, you need fading memories in your hand to be able to threaten them with another Watcher. You don't have another Watcher in hand to follow that up with. And this makes the world of a difference. Because all of a sudden, while you're paying a price for rushing into the win condition. Because sometimes you have Spectral Matron, but you don't have fading memories, so you have to wait a little bit more in order to go for it and not risk losing your win condition. So by doing that, you're giving the opponent more time to develop their own late game. And then it becomes a fair fight. So by doing this, when you auto-spawn that, if they have an answer for that, you're going all in. And if they halt your Watcher because it has ephemeral, it will die at the end of the turn, and just like that, you lost your win con. So it's a double-edged sword. There's a price to pay. There are risks on the table, English, and it's actually fair. I would love this change because it would also make it so that Spectral Matron is not limiting future design when it comes to, as limiting to future design when you're creating other like late game behemoths, right? And I think this change would just make the deck completely fine. Just one minor change to the card and we're good. You don't even have to nerf the Watcher, right? You can leave your dear Lysandra, your new champion, alone. It's okay. Just do this and we're good to go. And that's basically where I'm going to end the video at. Those are the changes that would apply. I would love to see some buffs to regions like Bilgewater on top of that. But when it comes to nerfs, I think this approach would fix the metagame completely. I mean, not 100% completely. It's important. It's impossible to tell. But I definitely think we would be in a much better place than we were before. I think we would fix the majority of the problems and we would have a really nice environment. And God forbid we can go back or eventually lead into that sweet gold era of a mid-range meta, which I so dearly miss. And that's where I will leave this at. Let me know what you think of my proposed changes. I'll leave in the description down below. Like I'll leave a link to like I'll have these changes listed. I'll have them listed in the pinned comment in case people just want to read them. And yeah, thank you guys for watching my 40-minute video of me just rambling. Hope you enjoyed. Have a solid day, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.